Cascadia is a Yukon-focused copper gold exploration company with its flagship Catch property, which hosts a new copper gold porphyry discovery. As well, Cascadia is in the midst of merging with Granite Creek Copper that holds the Carmax project, which contains over 650 million pounds of copper, as well as gold and silver. We've got CEO Graham Downs and Andrew Karn, VP Corporate Development, joining us today. They're going to review the company, the relevant projects, and discuss the announced merger with Granite Creek Copper. It's Thursday, June the 19th. I'm Martin Gago with Market Radius Research. Please remember, this is neither a recommendation nor investment advice. We're here to learn about the company. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Congratulations on the big news. And how are things going?
Great. Well, thank you so much for having us, Martin. We really appreciate it. And we know we have a lot of people from around the world on this webinar. So I think it's a great opportunity for us to tell a lot of people about what we're very excited about right now. If I just maybe we can start out with a quick introduction for those that might not know us. Andrew, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, and then I'll introduce myself.
Sure. Andrew Karn, VP Corporate Development for Cascadia Minerals. I've been working in the exploration sector now for about 15 years. Background in engineering, but shifted over to the corporate side here a couple of years ago, and been working with Graham and the team in the Yukon for over a decade.
Yeah, and most of my history, I started up in the Yukon in the early 90s, kind of intermingled some schooling in business and advanced GIS programming, but spent most of my career working for a geological engineering company in the Yukon. So worked in every facet of mineral exploration. And for some of those that don't know, Cascadia was formed from Andrew and I worked for a company called ATAC Resources, which many of your viewers might know. We sold that to Hecla in 2023. And during that process, we spun out Cascadia Minerals because we were transitioning to more of a copper gold focused company. So that's how Cascadia was formed. And we'll take you through what we're doing up in the Yukon throughout the presentation. So I think we can go ahead. I will be making both Andrew and I will be making some forward-looking statements. So have a look at this. That's on our website as well. So quickly, just to get everybody up to speed, I won't spend too much time on this, but we have 70 million shares outstanding. We've got about 1.7 in the till right now. Again, we're focused in the Yukon. We've got a great relationship with Hecla. Michael Gentili is a very big supporter of what we're doing. Barrick Gold, we've been working with Barrick, and that's a bit of a legacy from the ATAC days. And then ourselves putting in as much as we can, wherever we can. Our team is very technically based, and we've got a couple Hecla directors, Jim Sabala and Kurt Allen. And most of the people on our board have worked up in the Yukon for many, many years. Our technical committee is highlighted by Rob Karn, over 40 years in the Yukon. Kurt Allen, obviously VPX for Hecla. Ed Cope, former VPX North America for Barrick. So we're a very, very technical team to help us move forward here. So I guess key things here, we're focused on copper gold. Like I said, we work in the Yukon. The company is well structured. The key thing here is we're kind of the first movers in the Yukon in the Stikine Train, which I'll get into in a little bit on the next slide here. Just to kind of get right into the transaction, we really want to spend a bunch of time talking about this transaction. We're incredibly excited about this. This is a huge opportunity for us. Granite Creek has a project called the Carmax project. It's in central Yukon. It's an advanced stage project. Kind of what we had before was earlier type stage projects, copper gold porphyries in the underexplored area in the Yukon, from the Stikine Train that goes up into the Yukon, which we'll talk about. But the resource that Carmax has is 651 pounds copper, 302,000 ounces gold, at over 1% copper equivalent. So that is a very, very strong foundation for us. And it complements what we're doing in the Yukon and our earlier stage projects. So we're really looking forward to getting into this. It's road accessible. It's a very large project, 177 square kilometers. It's about 12K from power. So just, there really aren't that many of these in stable jurisdictions like the Yukon, and we're incredibly excited about doing it. A lot of the companies in the Yukon, like Gladiator and Western Copper, are getting a lot of traction. And very importantly, the Selkirk First Nation, which we share on the Carmax project, is purchasing a Minto copper mine just north of the Carmax project. So potential synergies there, which we'll get into in a little bit more here. Again, I'll talk about the Stikine on the next couple of slides and what we're doing there on the earlier stage things. But what's really good about this project is the Carmax project is that, you know, it utilizes our extensive experience in the Yukon, and it fits in with what we're doing. It's not like we were going out and looking for another opportunity in another country around the world. This is we know it. We know the First Nations, we know the government, we absolutely know how to work in the Yukon. As part of this transaction, we're raising up to $2.25 million. That's fully subscribed. And again, just to highlight the opportunities for near-term catalysts, the key thing here is we understand we have a strong foundation, but we see a lot of upside in being able to grow this and really hitting this one out of the park. So we're really going to be focused on growing that resource. And we just finished a drill program on our other flagship project called the Catch project. We've got 5 holes into a high-grade outcrop there, which we can talk about. And again, the Stikine terrain, which we'll chat about here in a bit. And actually, this is actually a good slide here. You can see that the ownership of the deal, 59% will be Cascadia, 41 Granite Creek. You can see that we've made a copper porphyry discovery in recent years. We've found a brand new high grade. This is the most amount of gold I've ever seen in outcrop in my 30 years working in the Yukon. 1,000 grams gold and 267 grams silver out of what's called the AMP zone. We're getting other outcrop samples of 180 grams gold, 40 grams gold, 30 grams gold. So we've got 5 holes into that. And again, now that we're taking on Granite Creek, we get to complement what we're doing with an advanced stage, obviously 36 million tons of over 1% copper equivalent, which is a fantastic start and foundation for our company. The little map here on the right, the little big green blob, I think a lot of your viewers will know that the Golden Triangle, which hosts most of the Stikine terrain, copper gold deposits and development projects, is just to the south of us. But a lot of people didn't know, and it wasn't really recognized until recently, that Stikine terrain goes right up into the Yukon. And because you still have to stake by hand in the Yukon, there's been almost no exploration for looking for copper gold porphyries or deposits in that terrain. And what's beautiful about that is the Klondike Highway goes right up the center of that Stikine terrain. So we feel like we're the first movers in there. We've staked a number of properties, and we have a lot of up to 10 other projects that we want to potentially stake in the next year or so. So we're going to have advanced stage projects with Carmax and a lot of grassroots discovery potential alongside that as we move forward. And you can see that Carmax is right in that Stikine terrain as well. So it's a natural fit for Cascadia. Zooming in even closer, I just want to draw your attention to where we are. Carmax here in the center is kind of the hub of the Yukon. Kind of have our highways going everywhere from there. Our Catch project, which is our flagship for now. And then this is the Carmax, Granite Creek Carmax property just up to here. You can see that there's actually been a big infrastructure piece, the Carmax bypass road that goes out to this Northern Freegold Road, and then there's a road right out to Carmax. And even extending from that, there's a network of roads that are on the Carmax project that start working their way out towards the Minto. It's not there yet, but there's, that's a natural fit to make Minto road accessible, because right now and previously Minto had to barge across the Yukon River. So that's something that could be done in the future. We talked about, the Selkirk First Nation is buying the Minto project right now. And importantly, these other exploration projects are also going to be going in with that. So we look forward to what Selkirk First Nation does with this, and it should complement what we're doing with Carmax Copper. So very excited about this. I think I've talked about most of the location. There's, and I did say, we are looking at a lot of exploration potential here. Andrew will touch on that a little bit as well. A lot of great work has been done by Granite Creek, so it's gonna be nice to take over from there. So a recent PEA was done on Carmax. It envisioned a 7,000 ton per day open pit, conventional float. So sulfide metallurgy is very good. But I really want to focus in on some of the more recent holes that Granite Creek did here. Some very nice holes, which we've modeled, and they just haven't been stepped out on. So we're very excited to get out there this fall and be able to follow up on those and step out and really start building ounces and pounds on this project. But you can see 105 meters of almost 1% copper, silver and gold as well. 120 of 0.7% copper. So really good grades, and there's not too many of these around. So it's a unique and great opportunity for both Granite Creek shareholders and Cascadia. So
what
Andrew,
was the cutoff on the copper on the PEA?
I believe it was 0.6, but Andrew probably might have that.
Yeah, I'd have to double check that for you, but I believe it was a variable cutoff because they were looking at the majority of it as an open pit constraint that I think was a bit lower than that. And then some of the deeper material was at that 0.6% cutoff where it fell outside of the existing pit shell. So I believe it's 0.3 and 0.6 of the two cutoffs, but I'd have to confirm that.
Okay, thank you.
So just talk a little bit, they've done a lot of work at the Carmax project. It's got that resource already defined. And I think the exciting thing here is what the work that they've done metallurgically and looking at the engineering aspects of it with this PEA that was completed in 2023. So the history of this Carmax project, it's been around for a long time. It's seen a lot of focused work in the 80s and the 90s. There's been over 40,000 meters of drilling completed on the property historically. But the focus of all of that work was on copper oxide mineralization. In fact, previous operators took this all the way to getting a mine permit to build an oxide copper heap leach, but ultimately just chose not to proceed with that. The challenge about that processing path is it was very limiting. It limited them to only recover the oxide mineralization, and it limited the recovery of gold as well. So what's exciting is in the last number of years here, since Granite Creek acquired it, they've done the metallurgical work to confirm that, yes, you can recover the sulfide mineralization really well by flotation, and you can also recover the oxide mineralization through a blended flotation process as well. So that's the foundation that underpinned this PEA study that they did in 2023, which came out with a base case of $230 million post-tax NPV. Now, that was done at $3.75 copper and $1,800 gold, so significantly lower than current metal prices that we see. They ran a higher case one scenario at $4.25 per pound copper and $2,000 per ounce gold, and that brought the post-tax NPV up to about $330 million. And this is for a project that has a projected capital cost of about $230 million. So you're already at that point there where you're seeing, good returns on what's already been defined. It's a robust study with good recoveries and a 7,000 ton per day mill. That builds this foundation of knowing that, we've got a project here with demonstrated economic potential. Let's build on it. Let's expand it. Let's make it much bigger and then go back in there and we'll have something that just knocks it out of the park. So the improved metal prices are one part of that, but really what gets us the most excited about this is the potential for resource growth and the potential to make new discoveries elsewhere on the property. The next one. Yes. So looking here, you can see a long section of the resources that have been defined to date. Oxide is in red color and sulfide is in blue color. And what you can see is particularly on the 1213 deposit on the right side here, there's been very limited drilling to depth. And that's just due to the nature of the historic focus on oxide mineralization. But when we dig into it and we look through the database and we look through the models in 3D, there's some truly phenomenal intersections here on the periphery of the deposit into the sulfide mineralization that just have not seen follow-up yet. So those holes that Graham cited earlier, where you're getting over 100 meters of 1% copper equivalent, those are largely completed in that 1213 deposit in the last drill campaign that was done. They're all open. They haven't seen follow-up yet. So we're excited to get in here and step out on all of these deposits that are all open along strike and at depth with some nice high-grade sulfide mineralization.
Just want to kind of comment that this 2000 deposit was not brought into the PEA in 2023. So
yeah, exactly. That one was defined as part of the resource, but just due to the size of it currently, it didn't report to the PEA. So that's the sort of thing where you grow those resources, just a little bit, and with the current metal prices, that will fall into the next economic study and just, really build the mine life already. On the next slide here, what you can see is some of the IP work that's been done in the most recent years. So in 2022, Granite Creek did an extensive IP survey kind of right around the known deposits. And what you can see on that top section on the right is this is a line going right through the known resources. And you get a really strong correlation between known sulfide mineralization from drilling and high IP chargeability. It makes sense. You've got good sulfide mineralization carrying grade, and you've got this barren granite diorite host rock that doesn't respond on the geophysics. So you get a high contrast there. And what's exciting is that when you look at all these lines kind of laterally offset and to the north and south of the deposits, there's all of these targets. There's targets at depth, there's targets laterally offset to the side that haven't seen follow-up drilling yet. So they've really laid the groundwork here to make the next stages of discoveries. And we're now in the position where we can raise the money, get in there and do this discovery stage drilling. So, the first scale is just stepping out on the resources themselves. This is the next scale where we step out to these other targets around it. And then when we go to the next slide here, you can see so far we've just been looking at that Carmax deposit part of this broader 177 square kilometer property. And in the recent years, that whole northern part was added to this portfolio. So that's only recently become part of the broader property. But it's got numerous historical zones defined on it with, geochemistry, geophysics, historical excavator trenching. And then this zone A that you see in the top corner there was drilled in 1980 and is actually defined mineralization across about 350 meters of strike length, with intervals including 25 meters of 2% copper and 1.7 grams gold, 22 meters of 2% copper and 2 grams gold. So, some really phenomenal results up there. And that, as far as we can tell, has seen basically no follow-up work since the 80s. So a lot of low-hanging fruit here as well as we get outside of the immediate deposit area. So the strategy will be to try and advance that deposit itself, but also do some of this regional exploration work to keep making new discoveries across the property. We're now just going to switch gears and just quickly touch upon our existing catch property, which, as we mentioned earlier, we just finished a drill program on. So that's just to the southeast of Carmax. It's actually quite close to infrastructure as well. It is helicopter supported at the moment, but we've just been operating out of a gravel pit on the highway. Crews stay in the town of Carmax and in a hotel that's owned by the local First Nation. So it's been a really effective, really great place to work. And what's exciting about Catch is this is actually a brand new discovery. It was made by a prospector in 2020 and had no documented historical exploration ever having been conducted on it. In 2023, we did the first ever diamond drill program on that property. You can see here on the right, that's a copper and soil map. There's some phenomenal anomalies there, about 5 kilometers of length to that anomaly. We've defined mineralization so far kind of in 3 main zones. There's the Volt zone at the north, the Amp zone in the middle, and the Spark zone at the south. So that 2023 drilling defined porphyry mineralization at the Spark zone, the first hole encountering 116 meters of 0.3 copper and 0.3 gold. And then we stepped out 400 meters to the east in 2024 and came up with 106 meters of 0.37 copper and 0.22 grams gold. So we know that we're onto a major porphyry system here. You can see in the drill hole highlights chart that within that, there are some couple meter intervals here that are running more like 1% copper and 1 gram gold. We know that those represent potassic alterations, so the core of the system. And really, it's an exercise now of vectoring towards that core of the system to try and find, a broader horizon of that higher grade mineralization. But what's got us really excited this year is that Amp zone that you see in the center. That's about 2 kilometers north of that porphyry discovery. As Graham mentioned, at the end of last season, we just had crews following up on some regional soils who pulled this sample you see there out of an outcrop that ran over 1,000 grams gold. Now, that was a bit of a shock to us. When you look at the rock, it just looks, it's weathered, it's got some sulfides in it, but we certainly weren't expecting anything like that grade. So we had a little bit of time last year to follow up on it. We had crews back in there. They pulled out more samples running 187 grams gold, 141 grams gold, 47 grams gold. So, it's confirming to us that this isn't one just tiny little vein there. There's something significant going on. So our crews got out there in mid-May of this year. They spent 2 weeks doing kind of prospecting and mapping, and you can see these alteration zones here that have now been kind of confirmed through field mapping. And there's 2 of them. There's one that seems to carry more of the high-grade gold mineralization, and the other that's aligned with some previously sampled high-grade copper mineralization. So what we've just completed with the first ever diamond drilling on this target, it's just a hair under 800 meters that's been done across 5 holes. We've tested both that high-grade gold alteration zone as well as that zone that carries the higher grade copper. Our crews are in the midst of logging that core right now, processing the samples, getting off to the lab. So I just say stay tuned on that. It's going to be a bit, unfortunately, before we get assays, but this has the potential to be a really, really exciting discovery as well. So ultimately, where are we as a company? Well, we've got a lot going on right now, and I think it's an exciting time to be a Cascadia shareholder. We talked about the merger and concurrent financing that we expect to close in early August once Granite Creek's been able to have their shareholder meeting. In the meantime, we've got that work ongoing at the catch property. We're also going to step back and do some kind of regional exploration activities at well on our Max and Milner projects. Those are earlier stage catch analogs that we've staked elsewhere in the steep gain terrain. And then the plan is, as soon as we get this transaction completed on Granite Creek, we want to get into the Carmax project and do a fall drill program this year. The exact size of that's still being determined, but hopefully at least 2,500 meters of drilling to just start immediately stepping out on some of those near surface high grade sulfide zones that just are screaming for follow up work. So all in all, really well positioned right now. It's a great opportunity, and we're pretty excited to move the combined company to get forward.
Gentlemen, thank you. That was very good, very comprehensive, nice, tight, and covered a lot of territories. I appreciate that. How much money do you currently have on the books? You're raising $2 million. Post-transaction, what does your sort of cash reserves look like?
Yeah, so right now we've got about 1.7 million in the bank. We're raising 2.25 as part of this. A decent chunk of that does get eaten up by transaction costs and those pieces, but we expect to come out of this somewhere between 2 to 2.5 million in cash in the bank. The exact number is going to just depend on to what degree we do additional exploration activities here over the next couple of months. But that's going to put us in a good position to be able to put at least $1 million towards exploration at Carmax this fall with that existing financing.
And what is when you're drilling there, what is the rough cost per meter?
It's about 400 all in.
Okay.
Roughly. Yeah,
right.
Which is incredibly good because, we've done a lot, most of our work is done helicopter access, which, it does increase the price. So the amount of drilling that can get done on a project like this on the road, it's got a camp in there already. It's got roads. There's a bunch of infrastructure. It's ready to go. We know the drillers. We've known them for 25 years. We know them very well. They're heavily involved in this project. They want us to use their camp. So we're very well positioned to work with them. And they know the project like the back of their hand. So it's going to be an easy transition.
And with the drilling at Carmax, you have potential both stepping out and at depth. Did I get that right? Are you doing both, or are you going to go kind of in the center where there are known drill holes and just go deeper down to see what lies below?
I think it's not even just below, it's stepping off to the side. I don't know if you can go back to that long section, Graham. But the nice thing there is, the focus initially is going to be building open pit potential or potentially open pitable mineralization. The 147 deposit's been, drilled off fairly well to depth. There's a lot of really great high grades on the periphery of that, but, we'll probably let that sit for the moment. The 2000 and the 1213, I think, are going to be the immediate focus because that's where we see the potential to just add mineralization really close to surface there by stepping out on existing holes a little bit more at depth, but we're talking there, within a couple hundred meters of surface. So really quite shallow stuff where we know we've got good grades in existing drill holes that are open.
I just want to reiterate that, over the last 20 years, the majority of the focus has just been oxide. Like literally, they drill the oxide and stop. Like that's for the majority of the history of this project, which has been in different hands. And I think we're going to be better off with ourselves moving this forward. A lot of great work's been done, but the metallurgy on the sulfide is excellent, and we just need to go and extend and go where the other groups, were just going for oxide. Like they just stopped in oxide because that's all they were looking for. So we're definitely excited to get out there.
With the potential for the sulfide, is that because processing technology has evolved where they're able to handle that effectively now, or why didn't they follow up on the sulfides?
I think it was just a change in philosophy. Back in the 80s, 90s, there's a lot of interest in just like what's cheap, what's easy, and that's a heap leach. You can heap leach the oxide copper quite effectively with sulfuric acid. But the challenge that they always had is, well, there's a lot of gold in this too. And when you do a acidic copper leach, you don't get any of the gold recovery. So in subsequent years, there was a lot of work looking at, well, is there a way to do cellular vat leach where you first get the copper out and then try to get the gold? It was getting really complicated. So it's, no one had really looked at the sulfide option. And so that's when the Granite Creek guys stepped in and said, well, wait a sec, let's just step back here. Let's look at this more holistically. Is there an approach that can recover the gold from the whole system, which the sulfide float does, as well as that sulfide mineralization? Now, it doesn't recover the oxide as well as the heap leach did. That's just the nature of flotation, but it still has quite acceptable recoveries through the copper oxides. And the nice thing here is, we've already found all the oxide because it's going to be near surface, and we know that that's factored into the recovery models as well. So anything we add through this drilling that's at depth in sulfide is just going to improve the overall recoveries of the project because it responds so well. And the analog to this, of course, is that Minto deposit, where they have been doing sulfide flotation for years in production. Very, very similar style of mineralization that recovered to a really, really high-grade copper concentrate. So it's just nice to have that analog nearby and that kind of understanding of how the processing works.
The bit on, let's say you're a future PEA, the biggest sort of a big upside, because the 2000 deposit was not included at all, I believe you were saying in that. So was it just because it was, like, I think you said because there was relatively low oxide in it and a lot of sulfide, or is it just not big enough? So once you add some tonnage to it, then it'll sort of a binary event. It'll hit that and all of a sudden it can slide in.
It's exactly that, is my understanding. Is that just, yeah, at the size it was at when defined in the resource, when they ran the study, it just kind of was at that tipping point of whether it made sense to fall into the pit optimization or not. So what's going to change that? Exactly. You have higher metal prices, it's going to fall in, or if you find more mineralization, it's going to come in as well. So that's a significant opportunity to kind of just bolster the PEA through either finding more mineralization or improving the metal prices.
Was there a resource estimate on the 2000 deposit? So, like,
yes.
Do we know how many pounds potentially are there?
So that global 650 million pound number and the 300,000 ounces of gold number does include the 2000. It's just when they went to the mine scheduling exercise for the PEA that it fell out.
Oh, so it's included in that 650, but not in the NPV.
Exactly. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So that just makes the NPV better. When it, as you say, that binary switch flips and it, comes in economically, that's just going to bolster the NPV further.
All right. Okay. Well, and
potentially quite well.
Yeah. I guess, and then can you sort of zoom out a bit, I guess, and just talk a little bit more? I don't have specific questions. You've addressed it somewhat, but just more of the regional exploration, looking for new potential discoveries. Do you have a priority list yet? Or do you still have a little more groundwork to do before you get some priorities?
I don't mind taking that one on. I mean, I think Zone A is kind of a no-brainer. Those kind of grades right at surface, 25 meters of over 2% copper. I think one of the things about this project is just a lot of people don't know about it, and we want to get out there and tell the world about it. And I think when we follow up on the Carmax step-out drilling and maybe Zone A as soon as we can get out there, those kind of grades at surface are incredible. And there's been some work. There's lots of geochem. We didn't want to get into the weeds for today, but there's a lot of IP that's been done out here and here that has some very nice response as well. There's a lot of geochem that was done out there. We're very systematic. We want to get out there and do full-on property-wide geochem. What's nice about this is you can get an excavator in there. You can do trenching while we're doing reclamation as well. So it's just, there's so much more you can do at a better cost as opposed to flying. So, I mean, and we need to do our own work out on all of these other targets and do a lot more IP. So I don't know. There's a lot of targets here. I mean, we want to focus on building the pounds and ounces. Zone A, I mean, these grades are incredible. We have to go figure it out and see what we can do there as well. So don't have the time to go into all the other targets, but happy to do that with any of your viewers that would like to look into it a bit more.
I'd like to switch over a little bit and talk about the Minto mine and what's going on there, because the geology is similar to what you have. It was a successful long-running mine. It's shut down now. New owners, and I guess maybe just with new structure as well, with new prices in the marketplace. What are they looking at? Potentially reopening it, or just care and maintenance and safely shutting it down? What kind of news could we get out of there?
Yeah, so that one's Minto Mines operated for a long time. It did go into receivership in 2023. It experienced some challenges there. The company that had it at the time was, I think, undercapitalized and just couldn't quite get the development proceeding the way they needed to. And as Graham alluded to earlier, one of the challenges for Minto has always been the fact that their road crosses the Yukon River. So they're reliant on either a barge or an ice road. And then there's kind of increasingly lengthy periods on either side of that these days where you can't use the barge because there's too much ice in the river, but it's not frozen enough to drive over it yet either. So there was just some, I think, operational challenges there that ended up putting it into receivership. But it did produce a lot of copper for a long time, provided a lot of jobs to the Yukon and a lot of benefits to the Selkirk First Nation. So the exciting recent development on that front is that it's been announced that the Selkirk First Nation is purchasing that mine out of receivership. They just received the final court approval for that last Friday, which is very exciting to see. And my understanding is, we're still waiting, I think, for more information from them on exactly how that's going to transpire. But the talk I've seen is that the plan is to, immediately dive into some pretty comprehensive exploration and start working on putting that thing back into production in the near term. So it's been on care and maintenance. The asset's still there. There's a lot of equipment and stuff that they've inherited through that, which is great. They're going to do that exploration work to bolster the resources and then look to get it operational again. So we see huge synergies there in the future with that operating just to the north of us.
Yeah, I'd like to get into the, I guess, two paths. They're able to restart the mine. What sort of synergies could you foresee working with them? Or do they view you as a competitor of sorts? Or is it more a synergy?
We don't know yet. We'll have to have a chat with them. But what's nice, sorry, Andrew, if I chime in, is that we overlap with the Selkirk First Nation but also the Little Salmon Carmax First Nation, and we want to develop those relationships even further, and hopefully we can work with the Little Salmon Carmax First Nation as well, and bring them in, potentially in as a partner. So what we want to do is just really collaborate. Be happy to collaborate with Selkirk and the Minto. We'll look at all options. I'm a firm believer in, kind of putting companies together and projects together and making something that's going to be sustainable and really benefit the First Nations and local communities.
I was just going to say, so I think that's the answer. Is we don't know yet. I know they're in the process of launching this new company, so we wish them the best of luck with that, and look forward to talking to them as it gets off to the races. But ultimately, the more projects you have successfully operating in one area, the better chance you have of everyone benefiting. You're going to develop a more robust workforce, more service and supply companies that can, help support those operations. So I think, in theory, if both projects were to go into production, that just collectively would be to everyone's benefit.
Is their project close enough where you initially use toll milling or share resources, or it's not quite close enough for that?
I think the answer is I don't know yet. There's a lot of variables that factor into that. The first piece the road would have to be moved, and I think there is arguments to be made that if they did want all season road access, it would logically go right through our project. But in terms of whether shipping would make sense and things, certainly something we'd love to look at down the road, but I don't think we have an answer on that yet.
And then I guess sort of the one other option, if let's say there isn't exploration upside, the economics don't work, if they do to shut it down, there'd be a mill for you to potentially get access to if they don't have use for it.
Exactly.
But I want to switch over to your catch project. Now, I think we've covered everything on Carmax, been pretty in depth here. Is there anything we missed or you'd like to highlight as we wrap up this section?
I'll just touch on one thing, which is just, people look at the Yukon as a bit of a infrastructure challenge jurisdiction. I think you hear that from a lot of investors. Well, it's in the middle of nowhere. It's hard to get to things. It's important to highlight that these projects are about as close to infrastructure as you can get from any Canadian exploration project. Carmax is just 10K from a government maintained road, the Free Gold Road, with its own road going straight to the deposits. Catch is 10K off an all season government maintained highway. That red line you see there is a high voltage power line. And, another exciting development recently is that the Yukon government and the BC government are partnering together, and they've got $40 million of funding from the federal government to start work on connecting the two power grids. So there's a huge push for infrastructure happening right now in the north. It's being driven by the federal government in terms of critical minerals advancement, Arctic sovereignty, and, we're just really in a great place here to take advantage of that as we see that focus and that federal investment really pouring into the territory.
And you're less than 200 kilometers away from Whitehorse, right?
Exactly.
So
it's about just over an hour drive from Whitehorse to Carmack, about an hour and a half. So it's extremely close to that. There's an international airport in Whitehorse. There's tons of staff and opportunities and things. So it's really a great place to be working.
All right. Okay. On to the Catch project. How much work have you put in there so far? How many meters? How many holes? Just to give a sense of scale of the work done to date.
We've got about 15, I think it's 15, 16 or 17 holes in it. I'd have to double check, but it's around 15 holes to date.
Yeah. All right. And it looks like your deepest, you got mineralization to 515 meters there. Were these what 600 meter holes or so, or?
The ones at the Spark Zone, a lot of them were at that 400 to 600 meter range. The holes we drilled at AMP this year are quite a bit shallower. Those are only a couple 100 meters deep because we're testing that real near surface intersection there. So I think the deepest one there is 250 meters, and the rest of those are quite shallow holes. And then the other thing just to note on that previous slide is you see this vault zone at the very north of the property, where we actually have an extensive copper and soil anomaly. That one we did put 3 holes into back in 2023. Before we kind of understood what was going on there. It turns out that whole zone's a bit of a landslide. So the materials moved a couple 100 meters from source, which has made it challenging to target in drilling so far. But we had a prospecting team on the ground earlier this year, a surficial geologist doing a lot of mapping work there to be able to, figure out what that movement is and where the source is. So excitingly, we think we've identified that now. We've got a bunch of rock samples in the lab that we're waiting to get results back on, but that's from potential outcrop that could be representative of the source of that mineralization. So, that target's now, I think, moved back to the stage where it could be drilled for a bedrock discovery as well. So there's a ton of irons in the fire here at Ketch. Encourage your viewers to reach out to chat more with us about it, or take a look at our website. There's a lot of maps there, but we've identified porphyry mineralization and drilling at Spark, but then some broad geophysical interpretation. And we've got these string of interpreted intrusions extending out to the northeast for a couple kilometers here. There's just really so much ground here to make new discoveries. It's just a matter of systematically getting after it.
And what is the plan this summer for drilling at Catch?
As of right now, we've wrapped up the current plan. So that was that 800 meters was what we had planned at Catch. As I say, we're getting samples to the lab as quick as we can. The assay turnaround times don't know on them yet, but I think we'll see what we get back from that drilling. Obviously, if we hit any significant gold mineralization, I think that'll be a real driver to get back in there and do some more drilling. We're permitted. We're able to do another work program this summer, but just for the moment, we're on a bit of a pause here while we wait for results.
Okay, waiting for results, get them back, interpret them, and then if information and time permits, then put some more holes in the ground.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I think I can tell you if we hit there, then we'll be back out there. The drill's sitting there ready to go again. But we don't want to get ahead of our skis. We want to see what we get back, and that'll help us and guide our future drilling.
Okay. And then on your lesser properties, you're just doing a little bit of sort of care and maintenance, kind of moving the ball slightly forward, but nothing to get sort of news release about at this point, so to speak.
Yeah. We're just, these are earlier stage, but actually Max is very exciting. Milner is it's exciting as well. We also have a high grade gold silver project on a road called the Rosie, and we're just doing smaller fly camp scale exploration programs there. Max is actually quite exciting, and I would actually encourage your viewers to take a look at that as well.
Yeah, so I'm just saying this, the town of Carmax is basically right halfway between the Carmax projects and the Catch project. So I guess can't share direct infrastructure. You can share maybe management, some overhead types of things. The projects are close enough for that.
Exactly. And geologically, I think that's the big piece here is it's all the same geological story. And that's what's so exciting here is, we had that focus on exploring the Stickeen terrain. We've learned a lot about the geomorphology of those deposits, and we can apply that knowledge to this combined portfolio. It's such a phenomenal, logical fit from an exploration perspective.
Yeah. All right. I've hogged the puck here, so to speak, for a while with my questions. We've got several in the audience, so I'm going to start running through those. Some of these may have been addressed already, but I'll just throw them out to make sure they're explicitly hit upon. How much drilling or exploration have you completed so far? Maybe that's a bit broad of a question, but.
Well, I guess this year it's the 800 meters on AMP.
Okay.
I don't have the exact meterage on previous years, but it's the other 10 holes that were done there, roughly 3,000 plus on the different zones.
Is someone's asking how robust would you categorize or describe the Carmack PEA as?
We've been through it in decent detail there. And again, there is a published technical report on that folks are more than welcome to take a look at. It feels like a pretty robust, well-done study. Some of these ones, they cut a lot of corners on. It doesn't look like that was done here. Obviously, we didn't author it, so I'm not as familiar with it as Granite Creek would be directly. But our reviews of it have been quite comprehensive. We looked into the metallurgy in particular quite a bit and feel quite comfortable there that there's a really good foundation. There may actually be room to optimize and improve recoveries even further, but we're confident that it establishes a good base case. It was done in 2023, and as everyone knows, inflation has picked up a fair bit in the last couple of years. So I think it's reasonable to say that the capital costs have probably gone up a bit since that study was done. But the rise in metal prices has been way more significant since 2023 when that was done. So that'll more than address, we expect, any inflationary pieces on both the capital and operating perspective.
And just to
All right.
reiterate, we're going in here to add pounds and add ounces. This is a 9-year mine life. That's what they envision. We think we want to get this to 15 plus. And just going back to the synergies with Minto, we want to get this to be a sustainable long-term project that all the communities can work with. And I think getting it to 15 to 20 years is doable, frankly. I think we can add 75 to 100% on top of this. So yeah.
There's a question here on how mining friendly is the Yukon, and I guess the region you're in more specifically.
I'd say it's actually quite good. There's obviously been a lot of talk over the last year since the incident of Victoria Gold, which was quite a bit to the north of here. But you're seeing a lot of companies being, very successful in Yukon right now. Snowline Gold's made a huge gold discovery kind of the northeast of this area. You've got Western Copper and Gold with a massive copper gold porphyry deposit that's entering kind of the final environmental assessment phase in the coming months. They've got Rio Tinto as a major partner of them in the background. You've seen B2 Gold make an investment in Snowline, Agnico Eagle, and Kinross are invested in the White Gold project. So we're actually in this situation now. I think you're seeing more of these major mining companies taking an interest in the Yukon than we've ever seen before. So that's a really positive sign that the jurisdiction is up and coming, but poised to thrive, I think. And you're also seeing more First Nations support, engagement, involvement in projects. And again, the cornerstone of that is the Selkirk purchased the Minto mine. I think that's the first Indigenous owned mine in Canada. I'm not positive on that, but I have heard people describe it as such. So, that's exciting. That's transformational. And I think you're going to see a lot of other First Nations say, well, wait a second, we can do this too. We can be a part of these projects. And the Carmax project is an overlap zone between the Little Salmon Carmax First Nation and the Selkirk First Nation. We've had a lot of really great relationships with Little Salmon over the past years because we're working the cash properties in their territory. And, they understand mining. They've worked with it for years. I think there's an opportunity there to really work with their citizens and get them engaged and involved with the project as well.
What percentage of the Carmack PEA, the NPV or the economic value, is in gold?
That is a number I do not have off the top of my head. The viewer's welcome to email us about that and we can get back. But I'd have to dive pretty deeply into the study to dig that up.
Someone is asking about the core that you got from AMP. Does the core look good? Any comments on what you saw there?
I can take care of that one. Yeah, no comment. I mean, we can't, I really don't want to get into that and create any type of speculation. I think it's important. It's not that I don't want to talk about it. I don't think,
it's too soon.
I don't think
it's important to recognize too, this is the first time we've ever drilled this target, right? It's not like somewhere where we've drilled it a bunch before. We know what grade looks like. We know what grade doesn't look like. It's the first ever drill holes into this target from an outcrop where the sample that ran really well, didn't look like it should have, right? So we're still getting understanding of where the grade is, what the grade looks like, how that comes together. And until we get the results back from the drilling, we don't have the ability to really map that back to what we're seeing in the core. So it's critical for us to get this first round of assays. Then we get that better understanding of, okay, if we see this alteration zone, that's what it might mean. We just don't have that yet.
Clarification question. There will be follow-up drilling at Catch if you get some encouraging results, correct?
Depending on what those results are, we'll take a look at them. And I think if they're good, like we hope, then yeah, absolutely. We're ready to go.
Are you doing a PEA or updating it anytime soon after this drilling, or are you going to wait to accumulate a few more seasons before you get much more robust data before updating the PEA?
I think definitely get this fall and then another season in for sure. And then we would kind of review what we've got and go from there.
All right.
Yeah. We see that resource expansion opportunity in it. It just makes sense to bolster that resource through a couple seasons of drilling before going back to rerun the study, because that's what's going to be the huge game changer on this.
Yeah, you want to see how far you can step out, hit the limits before you want to put the money and effort into getting a new number.
Exactly. We want to look at zone 8. What does that look like? Well, when we do that step out drilling, there's some there's direct step out right from other holes, but there's other IP anomalies direct within 100 meters of it that have never been tested. They could just completely change things. So we need to do that.
Yeah, yeah. And there is a follow-up question here, clarification. What is the timeline for closing of the Granite Creek acquisition? Are there any intermittent steps that need to be done, or is it just going to vote and then we'll hear the vote? Or
that's the big piece, is having the shareholder vote on Granite Creek side, which I believe we're still finalizing the scheduling on that, but I think that's going to be the first couple days of August. So the transaction will close, within days after we get that shareholder vote through.
Excellent. We've addressed all the audience questions here. Thank you, audience, for all of that. We had a great conversation, and you did your presentation, so I think we've covered everything. Anything you'd like to highlight before we wrap things up here? And then I guess just quickly summarize it's going to be a busy summer for you. What are the key events we're waiting to get? We're going to get some assay results back. We've obviously got the vote. What other elements should investors be looking out for through the summer and fall?
Those are definitely the key things, getting some assays back from AMP. We want to get those back as fast as possible, and the vote, and get this transaction done. And we're working on a number of other things. Now that we've announced this transaction, we've had a lot of inbound, so we have a lot of things to look at and contemplate and get ready for the program in the fall as well. So there is a lot going on, and we're very excited about what we're doing and some of the prospects we have. So yeah.
And we got a couple of little grants from the Yukon government to help advance some of our earlier stage projects, the Max and the Milner. So in the intervening time here, while we're waiting for the results back on Catch, we're going to have our field crews just out doing fly camps, prospecting and mapping at those earlier stage properties. So continuing to move them forward, really cost effective, especially with those government grants supporting it. So, there'll be some news coming in from that too, as we collect a lot of rock samples at those projects and hopefully make new discoveries as well.
All right. And with the assay results, do you imagine that all the assays are going to come out in one news release, or could they be staggered in a couple news releases, or too soon to tell?
I think it's too soon to tell. It's entirely dependent on how things go with the labs. And just, QAQC and all that. It's really kind of a bit out of our control in terms of how quickly they process batches, what order they do it in. So it'll be dictated by what we see as the data comes in, and not a good answer for that yet.
All right. Well, we've wrapped up. Any final thoughts to leave viewers with before we call it a day?
No, I just I think this is transformational for Cascadia. Something like this is the Carmax copper deposit is rare. We're excited to be taking that on. I think it's a huge opportunity, and I really encourage, like Andrew and I, we're available all the time. We communicate very well with shareholders. Please, if you have questions, call us. We always answer the phone, and we'll get back to you. So if you have any questions, come see us, come talk to us. We're always around and working hard here to move things forward.
Excellent. Graham, Andrew, thank you very much for your time. That was great. Looking forward to getting you back for some updates as things progress. Have a great day.
Excellent. Thanks.